For those of you who don't know me, my name is J.B. Canarney. I'm the superintendent of schools at the White River Valley Supervisory Union, which means I serve 10 towns throughout the White River Valley. As you know, traveling east-west in this state is not the easiest, but I start over and touch Thetford. I'm in with Stratford. Then I go up and down the 110 corridor in Chelsea and Tunbridge. Here in Royalton, Bethel, Stockbridge, Rochester, Granville, Hancock. So those are the 10 towns that I serve. And so I do think there's some faces outside of just the White River Unified District tonight, so thank you for joining us. And so I'm going to introduce some folks. We're going to kind of give a little overview about what we're doing proactively within the supervisory union to address safety concerns. And then we also have the Chief of Police here from the Royalton Police Force and our Sheriff and Windsor County Sheriffs. And I'll explain the partnership that we've done in the supervisory union starting last year to partner with Windsor County Sheriff's Office as well. And actually, Windsor County Sheriff's Office now has contracts with the majority of the towns that White River Valley Supervisory Union serves, which I'm sure Sheriff Palmer will be able to speak to as well. So, but first, before I introduce like the two stars of the show tonight, I did want to introduce the three White River Unified District principals who are here. So Jeff, maybe I'll just start by letting you introduce yourself, and then we'll go down through.
I'm Jeff Thomas, principal at the high school here. Thanks for coming.
Pierre.
Hi folks, I'm Neil Vaughn. I'm the principal over at White River Valley Middle School.
And I'm Amber Bowen, elementary principal. Our school personality is here and in Bethel.
Guys.
Sorry.
Loretta.
I'm Loretta Stallacre. I'm the Chief of Police for Royalton Police Department.
And I'm Ryan Palmer. I'm I say newly elected. February will be my second or start of my third year. And I took office February of 2022 and been working hard to kind of build the Sheriff's Department kind of a modern professional law enforcement agency. So we've taken over contracts for service in, I believe, all of the towns in Windsor and Orange County that you provide for the school district is. So we now have Stratford, Chelsea, Tunbridge, we have Brookfield as well, and Stockbridge, Rochester, Bethel, Sharon, and more towns to the south there. But so that's who we are, and thank you guys for having me, and I'm interested in some of your questions and where I can kind of give you some clarity and looking for some feedback on how we're doing for you guys.
So just to give a little overview, so back this fall we had a safety concern that came to our attention via social media that we partnered with both Royalton Police Force and Windsor County Sheriff to assess whether or not that was what we deemed a credible threat. We got information out to families. We continued to hold school that day, gave families an optional day to have that be an excused absence. And we were able to provide the community with an update around 10:30-ish in regards to more details. I will first admit that we wish that our initial information was out to all you families sooner than when we provided the initial update. All right, so I will own that as the superintendent. I held that up a little bit because I was working with local law enforcement and I wanted to have enough information to know whether I was still going to open school or not. Once I determined that it was safe to open school, that's when I get information out. But I was still prepared even at 7 to close school. So I want you to know we wished it was out sooner as well, but we were still trying to get all the facts to determine whether or not opening school that day was safe. The good news is last year, we've always had a strong relationship with Royalton Police Force, but last year, Sheriff Palmer and I had met because I was concerned with the lack of capacity in regards to the state police being able to respond to some safety concerns that we had at some of our schools in the supervisory union, just because their capacity in police force has shrunk, and so I wasn't feeling like we were able to get the response in a timely manner that we had previously. So Sheriff Palmer and I met and discussed creating a contract in order to give us coverage across our supervisory union schools when needed. So we do have a contract as a supervisory union with Windsor County Sheriff's Office. So the good news is anytime that we need immediate response, I will tell you, Royalton, of course, immediately responds to us here in Royalton, and actually at times they were responding to us in Bethel, just because of us being a unified district and White River Unified District. But now we have Windsor County Sheriff, who, if we have a concern around needing to do a safety check for students in regards to truancy concerns, in regards to addressing things in regards to vapes, could be legal substance on campus, we utilize Windsor County for all of our schools outside of Royalton, and generally go to Royalton Police Force first. Certainly, if Royalton's not able to respond, then we utilize that contract with Windsor County. So just know that I've been really pleased with the ability of Windsor County to serve all of our 10 schools, specifically because we are in Windsor and actually Orange. But as Sheriff Palmer said, that they've been able to contract with the towns too. So it's been a really good partnership throughout the White River Valley that our towns and the supervisory union have this joint contract in place. So I just wanted to get that overview. The other thing before I hand it back over to law enforcement to talk about things that they've been working with us on in regards to proactive responses to safety. And there's some board members here. The White River Valley Supervisory Union did adopt policy last fall in regards to making options-based response to school safety mandatory. And so what does that mean? So what that means is that we are no longer in a place that if there was a threat to the school, that we would just go to a secure the school, where what many of us, myself included, would have been trained multiple decades ago is you lock the doors, you pull the blinds, and you just hide, okay? We now have options-based where our faculty and staff are trained in administration that if there was a threat at the school, that they are trained in regards to how to assess the threat and use different options. Sometimes it is to secure the rooms, specifically if the threat is right there outside the room. But if there's opportunities to run and hide, then that's what our folks are trained to do. It's no longer just an automatic shut the door, pull blinds, and the doors are locked. The other thing we've been working hard to address in your schools is secure entrances. And one of the things that we had pursued in this latest bond vote in White River Unified District was to improve our secured entrances, both on this campus, specific to the back entrance that many of you enter for elementary parents for the elementary gym, but also for our high school students where they enter in the mornings and sometimes throughout the day. So what we're looking to do there is to provide a double entrance where you have to buzz into the school, you're then greeted by cameras or a live person, and then go through a second set of doors to be buzzed into. Right now, we don't have that on either campus, meaning same if you were to go to the campus at Bethel, yes, you have to be buzzed in, which is part of our policy, by the way, but we don't have a double set of doors that have to be buzzed in. So within that bond book, that is one of the things that the board and the administration have been looking to address. We have applied for a COPS grant, which is a federal grant, that we'll find out about in March, that could award us up to $600,000 to be able to achieve those entrances at both this campus and the Bethel campus. So know that if the board reconsiders the bond vote, which they're going to be discussing next Monday, secure entrances is something we want to address as well, but know that we're also pursuing a $600,000 grant to offset some of those funds to address those things. All right, I'll hand it back over. I've done enough talking, guys. Sorry.
Well, I'm a politician, so I can never do enough talking. Just keep going, guys. A little lighter. So, Jamie talked about options-based training, right? We've worked with Jeff. It's your school, right? Yeah. So I'm a instructor on the law enforcement side for active shooter response and a bunch of other stuff. I'm also what's called an ALICE instructor, which is a fancy term to teach folks in schools, churches, workplaces how to respond to what we call a violent critical incident. So we've worked with that. We're hoping to do a lot more this year with the different schools to be able to get training to your teachers options to how to respond to these different types of scenarios. So I see a lot of faces out there with some kind of inquisitive looks, and I think what I'd like to do, I followed some of the Facebook pages up here, and I'm curious, I think there's a lot of questions around school safety, there's a lot of concerns and thoughts and everything out there, so I kind of, which is probably the first time I've ever done this in my life, I'm going to stop talking, and I'd kind of like to open it up to you guys and see like what questions you have for us as law enforcement, and how we're supporting your school, and what are the things that are going on, and how we can, you know, and I'm open to some feedback. I'd love some feedback on what you think we can do better to serve your community. So, is that cool with everybody? Does that make sense? I mean, it's a community conversation, right? And I'll talk all night, but I want to hear from you. So, who wants to kick it off, kind of throw some stuff at us? Anybody? Man, this is like, it's almost like school. It doesn't start picking on people. So, as Jamie had said, we sat down and we developed a contract, so we're providing support on a weekly basis to the school. If they call us, the principals, unfortunately, all have my personal numbers. I mean, no, I'm kidding. I meant fortunately. Sorry, that was a typo. But we're really good at relaying that information to me directly and then responding accordingly. So, questions? Anybody have any questions on thinking how maybe you're worried about how something was handled? Ma'am.
Well, the day that that incident happened in town, Jamie was worried about the system. I was so independent, drove in, had no clue about what was going on. You know, I went last morning, but it felt very uninformed. And that was hard. You know, one of the kids wanted to go out to one of the doors and say, "Oh, they were going outside, period." Go. And just feeling sort of out there right now, not knowing what to say. It's hard. That's why
So, I mean, that kind of goes, I just went through a 4.5-day course for media and public relations, and I want to, you know, talk, Jamie and I talk a lot about these different things, but communication in crisis scenarios can always be better. I think it's on us to take that feedback and build on it.
it's hard because you can't just, you know, talk and you're not sure if your information is rock solid.
Sure.
So you don't know how much to say or what not to say.
Would you all like a timeline, the best I can give it without getting too far into the details? Would you like a timeline on how that all kind of developed and how things went and why? I put out a press or a news release on our findings and what our thoughts were on that. I got a little feedback. Facebook got a little spicy, but that's okay. Would that be interesting for everybody? All right. So around 5:30ish a.m., I received information from one of the principals that there was a threat made on, that there was a Snapchat story that was posted that said, "Don't run to school because it's going to get shot." By fast forward, we're going to leave a couple things out. Fast forward, by 7:40 a.m., we had the suspect, so to speak. We had met with them, we interviewed them, we had them in custody, so we met with the parents and determined, and we also met with the person that had posted that. And we realized that although there's a bunch of dumb stuff that happened in town a night or two before, kids firing BB guns at each other and doing all sorts of stupid stuff, that there was never a threat made by that particular person in regards to shooting up the school. We worked with parents and we met with other kids that were involved in that scenario. So by 7:40 a.m., we knew that there was not what I say, a credible threat Now, could that person, did they probably have access to firearms? Yes. The parents were aware of the scenario. They said, hey, they're secure. The kid, I met with him personally and looked him in the eye. People were concerned that behaviors that were going on outside of the school and other things, but as somebody who takes school safety very, very seriously, I can tell you by 7:40 a.m. roughly, we had this thing wrapped up and we knew that there was not a credible threat to the school. And for the remainder of that week, I had at least one or two deputies here at the Bethel and Royalton campus. We had deputies here. And the chief had her people here just to add that level of security. But I know there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of back and forth. People have very legitimate concerns about the type of behaviors that have gone on in the homes and outside the homes. And, you know, I might have fired back that there's a big difference between, you know, shooting somebody with a BB gun and coming to school with a 9mm. And I got some feedback on that. It's not necessarily positive, but I'll stand up here in front of you tonight and say that by 7:40 a.m. we knew that there was not a credible threat to the school. Thoughts on that? And give me the business if you want. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, like, after the fact, what next? You know, we see a pattern with this particular situation.
Sure.
Like, what next? Because what does it say that that pattern doesn't continue?
Yeah.
And what assurance do we have in the community that intervention will be made to interrupt that?
So, I think one of the biggest interventions with that kind of growing violence was, hey, we hunted you down that morning, went to your house, found you at your friend's house, all this type of stuff. The Royalton Police Department has or had a case investigating criminal behavior that happened out in the community a night or two prior. So there is intervention there from the legal, you know, from the criminal justice system. It's very convoluted, but I think the school's doing their part, what they can do in that situation. And for us, there wasn't a crime that was committed. I think somebody had very good intentions and heard stuff third person and made, you know, so there just wasn't a crime on our end. That kind of runs into school, DCF. Royalton was working the case, presenting the case. So it wasn't like it was just like, oh, sometimes when you get into juvenile stuff, it's not like I do a press release and say, oh, so-and-so was arrested, like you get with an adult. And it's a concern, so I'll follow the superintendent. We'll have some more discussions about where that stands. I don't know if that's
Yeah, I mean, I think that doesn't really answer my question, but I think that's the reality, but like, there isn't much else that can be done from an official perspective, like an official action. But like, I don't speak for anybody else like myself, but it still makes me feel uncomfortable, right? To know that, yeah, like, this is still possible, like, the seal has been broken, so to speak, you know? And, what's to say another child will see that and be like, well, I'll get away with that too, you know?
And again, a lot of escalating behavior, right? But I don't personally believe, and I'm just kind of the lead investigator on it for most of it, I don't personally believe that there was ever a threat. Maybe there was, and maybe somebody was there and saw it, and maybe the kids had said something to somebody, but I don't ever believe that that was ever a plan or real thought that was in motion. Doesn't mean that there's not concerns in this country all over with school safety, right? Not just this situation, but other situations. So
there wasn't a threat there. What happens the next day at school? Like, there wasn't a threat. He
classes on students. I can also tell you there's students who are part of our learning community that no longer get educated in our buildings because we're concerned about social emotional needs, behaviors, things of that nature, right? So just know across the supervisory unit that happens. We do have to educate students, but that doesn't mean that we have to educate them on campus, all right? So we absolutely do that across our 10 schools. But I would also say to you, and I think it's important, and this was important for me that day, we didn't have any evidence that what was posted was ever actually even stated by the supposed offender. What we had is a student admitting that they posted it and never heard that student say it.
And it came third party in a situation that happened outside of school that, regardless of how you interact, but it happened outside of school in the community. The kid was being a jerk, right? He was doing all sorts of, and I'm not going to get too far into it. Did somebody get shot with a BB gun or an airsoft gun or something and get crazy things told to them?
Uptown.
Yep.
Yes, but I do not think that that translated to where it does. It did not translate. There was never, again, I'll stand by this, there was never a credible threat of a kid coming to the school and shooting it up.
Well, and I think you stopped it before it happened that day,
Yes.
right?
Correct. So not only was there never a credible threat, but we put armed cops at the school and we intervened. So I was comfortable saying that the school's in. So, and I'm willing offline if someone wants to talk to me, or if you want to call me out here in the crowd, that's okay too. But I'm willing to have more discussion on this without getting too far into who, what, when, why. Go ahead. I see some faces. I see some thoughts. Don't be afraid to speak up. Part of this conversation, or part of this event, I think, is to have an in-depth conversation and say, hey, maybe I don't agree with you, and then maybe we need to look at how we handle things, and maybe we do it better. Sir.
How do you assess threat? When you talk about a BB gun can be failed as a 30 ounce. We came home with an air gun for the skill threat.
Sure.
I can shoot down over here. Across the board, so.
I went on a good job.
How is the BB gun firearms considered a weapon?
So never did I say that. Firearms sports instructor that was done. And we can't, this level of crime, the kid's not going to be taken into custody. He's not going to be stuck in a juvenile hall or anything like that.
We don't do that anymore.
Needs help, right? But that was done. So I think, again, maybe we should, maybe was a failure on our part that there wasn't more information on that. But again, the BB gun was seized, and there never was a credible threat to the
Right, so is he taking care of that night of the?
So, moving back, there's two different incidents. There was an incident in the back parking lot here, and then there was also this on the green. So the one on the green, we never found a viable person of interest. There were several kids seen in the area, but we could not prove who that might have been. There was conflicting stories about who had what and where. No BB gun was ever found with that scene. The other scene, we did see the BB gun, and the individual that might have been involved in the school thing might have, he no longer has a BB gun. So, two different incidents. So,
Brian, so when did you take him in, sort of say custody? Was that in the morning of?
Yes.
Is that somebody looked good now and said that everything's good? And he had no threat from the school? And my reasoning for asking this is, I guess, I've been here my whole life and I know the family. And I guess we'll go on the dirtbag side of things. And my big issue is, number one is the parent
to go from shooting somebody with a BB gun to shooting somebody with a live firearm. And also, if you go back to Tulloch and what's Parker, the Zantock murders, not a big stretch. They were acting out in similar ways, doing stupid stuff, and then they had that incident transpire. So again, there's concerns, and I'm not trying to minimize your concerns that this child or that child, they're real. Like and again, I'm not trying to minimize that to you, but
We do have, we are keeping a very close watch on it. We know, we have a lot of people saying, hey, they're here, they're here. So we're keeping a very close watch on where they're wandering and, I know it. Yep, I know it.
I just want to go back to the first incident that happened in the school parking lot. I'm an elementary school parent, and I didn't hear anything about that, like in an official manner, until many days later. And my kids were here at the after-school program while that was happening, and the after-school staff were not made aware of what was going on. So I just want to hear from the school, like, what steps are being, what are we learning from this to, like, be safer for the next?
Yeah, and Jeff, you may want to speak to this. I was out of town. But what I would say is that I think as soon as the school was aware that same day, we did respond. I don't think that necessarily administration was aware that happened the night of. So if you're saying it happened in the back parking lot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, that was my understanding, is that the day we got informed, which was the next day that there was an issue out back, there was a letter that went out to families.
Right, but the day that it happened, while it was happening, like, there were kids on the playground, there were kids all around the school, and, like, the staff were aware of what.
Because I don't think staff were aware, right? They got reported to us the next day, and then we started pulling video footage, is my understanding.
Yeah, it was at
That's my
5:30 that evening in the parking lot, and then the next day we watched video because of the hearsay from the students. And then we reached out to the police department. They came in and they went.
And then we got a letter out.
And that letter was out. Maybe I was mistaken then, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, I wanted to just say this, and I'll just say it for the people who are on Snapchat right now, and for people who know people on Snapchat, you can repeat it to them. I think the message for little people and older people is see something, say something, but say it to the right people. Because I know I have a teenager at home that is on Snapchat who probably knew things before I did. And reporting it doesn't mean reporting to a principal. Like, everybody has the capacity to call law enforcement. The thing that happened on Snapchat could have been reported much earlier. I know that there were kids that saw that much earlier. And same thing with the parking lot. So that's the thing I'm trying to drive home in my own house with a teenager. And for the people I have access to, is just when you see something, say something. And say it to the right people as soon as possible. Because we can't inform if we don't know. We can't act fast enough if we don't know either.
No, it's a good point, and Andrew's right. I mean, I think there's some people upset by our response with the social media thing. I will tell you that I couldn't do my job if I didn't shut down at night. So if you email me at 11 o'clock at night, I'm not going to see that until I get to my office. I don't have email on my phone.
But I have a 24-hour dispatch.
So by calling the police, that morning, we got lucky that we have some principals that as soon as they get up, they just check their phones in bed. And so that's how this started going on. That's how I was notified. But meanwhile, there were parents emailing us that night. And so we did call law enforcement as soon as we found out, but I wish that they had already been notified. And that is part of what delayed the process that morning and getting word out to you, is that we were responding after we woke up. So do know that part of what we're working on with our students and teachers as well is just what Andrea said. Like, if you see something, say something. Because then I think that, police will be informed, and I will tell you that can work really well. Like, Ryan called me on a Sunday one afternoon because a student's family reported something that they were concerned about in another town, not either one of Royalton or Bethel. And he called me on a Sunday afternoon and was able to address it. because that process worked out. Like if otherwise, if they had just emailed me, I wouldn't have seen it until Monday.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. One thing I was frustrated with was the email was sent out, but I, like you, I'm not always checking my email. Sent my daughter to school that whole day, and I know it's 7:40 a.m. So there was no ground bread. I didn't know that. And my daughter was very upset that day. And I know, like, you do a great job communicating for the snow delays and whatnot, but I just felt very frustrated that it was just like an email that I didn't see until after I had figured out.
That is fair. It was a text and email that went out, and I was not able to do a robocall because I was racing to the school. That's good feedback. Thank you.
And some of there was a slight delay in that from a law enforcement need. We had to find this kid, and so we didn't want to put out a message before school started. So we had to find this kid, which we did. And if we didn't, it would have been a different conversation, and I suspect that we would have closed school. We had, I think I threw 5 cops at this, but there was a little bit of a delay from an investigative standpoint. We had to do that because we had to find this kid first before there was a tip-off, because we were acting under the impression that, like, hey, this is happening, go find that kid.
So why couldn't that be done in conjunction with, because clearly something is going on, there's an email that's already crafted and sent out. Just one extra level of work.
You're absolutely right. We should have got something out sooner. I was waiting. I thought the email might have been at 7. I was closing school. We had spoken and determined that we didn't need to post. The student that was concerned was with the police. So that's why you get that. So it was still a contemplation. So even the email you did, that I was closing school.
That was the day that I dropped my daughter. And admittedly, there was something wrong that I thought. I believe the principal was standing outside with someone else. I just saw cars with kids backing out in the middle. And I remember sitting there with my daughter and I'm like, what's going on? Something's not right. But no one, I don't know, there was not even an extra step from, people from the school to just say, hey, just a heads up, this situation's happening. The other issue, I think it's at least somewhat relevant, is during the school day, obviously the students were told about it. My daughter was really upset. The guidance counselor pulled her aside, saw that she was upset, and then only gave her 2 options. Go back to your home or go to your next class. I want to know why the third option was, do you want to go, do you want to call the parents who wasn't offered to work? I know this is a little off track.
It's fine. So, and I think we should meet and discuss that further, because that's certainly not the way we should have been responding. So I would say your frustration would be my frustration in that scenario. I'm not going to defend that.
So one thing I'm hearing, and this is kind of an after actions review, I guess is what we call it, in the police and military world, is what we call something like this. But it sounds like communication is something that we can all work on from the administrative side to be better at. Is that a safe assessment? And what does that look like? What does better communication look like? What would it look like to you? What would make you feel better in this situation?
I would say a few things, a single source of truth. So where are we getting updates on these incidents? Is it via the Facebook page that seems to be active? I know that there were 1 or 2 that have split off into 2 separate groups. They're both, I assume, moderated. But where can we all go?
It would be direct communication from me or from one of the police forces. No, we're not going to do it. We're going to email it to you and certainly text you and say check your email. But no, that everything that I've been taught is that using Facebook in those situations, like that is not the way I'm going to communicate.
Right, so that's where, I mean, I know that we grab people that, because that's where a lot of these discussions will happen.
Community discussion.
Community discussion, sure. I could have sworn this was something.
So, we will provide official updates on our social media platform. That is a way for us to communicate with the masses. So if you see an official statement from our Facebook or Instagram, that is a way that we would communicate later on in the day, work with the school district and say, hey, I'm going to put down. There wasn't sufficient enough information, or people were not feeling like they were getting fed enough information, so we worked together. I put out a statement from our side. That's one of the, I don't have an email list, so, but our official Facebook page and Instagram is one way that you can get it. And I'll work on putting stuff on our website if it's coming from us, official statement. But the school already has all these official communication lines set up, and that works very well for them. And so, again,
Jamie, so being that you had that gut feeling of you didn't know if you were going to close or stay open, why wasn't there a delay open?
Because I didn't need to delay. The buses were ready to turn around and bring kids back.
Well, the parents were already here at the time of the announcements.
We spoke at like 7:05 that we knew we were going to be okay. Because I was stupid. Now, remember.
I only say that.
No, I appreciate it, Ted. I'm driving to work, speaking to him. I've got to pull over and use my communications person to get a letter out. Because I wanted you to at least have an update, not beforehand while this was done. Right? So, but we were prepared to also close school if that's what we needed to do. So it did take, there was a lot of it. I speak to him right after 7. I speak to the board chair, and I'm getting you guys out information as quick as I can.
and I misspoke. I said by 7:40, we were wrapped up by then.
By 7:40, he even talked to the other student, and we realized that there was never even a statement.
So, one thing I'm curious about whether we can do is as soon as you receive a threat, whether you know it's credible or not, put out a statement like immediately at that time, just saying that there's been a threat and we're calling it out.
So I think that
I mean, I'm just saying that because there was that vacuum of time when it's posted on Facebook.
Totally.
Nothing from the school.
And I want to work with Jamie. My background in the Air Force was emergency management and disaster preparedness, and I've done a lot of it. And I think that we need to figure out what meets that criteria, and not just any threat, because we also don't want to get into a scenario where we're alarming everybody, and that becomes a copycat thing. But I think what I'm hearing is we do have to tighten up the external communication, because the way a lot of you felt, everyone felt, obviously wasn't good enough, right? Like, we could have done a better job there. So I think that's a larger conversation that we'll work together on. I want you to know everyone that was involved in this did everything they could do. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and went and found this kid again, personally, got people up, and we went and found this kid. So I know on the external side, it's tough that you were kind of left in the dark, but our organizations are relatively small, and when you got the people on the top that are also the ones that have making communication, and in my case, I'm the one out there pounding the pavement trying to find this kid, so there was some lack of communication, but at the end of the day, we're here having a much different conversation than what we could have had, right? So I'll apologize on our end if we failed in that aspect, and we're going to continue to work and improve that.
Just to follow up on the question of what would work better for communications, a few come to mind for me. I hear you, Jamie. I'm not wanting to do communications on social media, but that is where a lot of people are going automatically, and I think if they're there, Sheriff Palmer, I think what your office does on social media is actually really good. To be putting out official statements, acknowledging what you can't share, but at least putting something out and doing it every few hours. So I think something like that for the school would be really helpful. I really value the school's email and text and communication channels like that. But I think one of the biggest barriers there is that not everybody in the community is on those. Not even every family or parent with kids in the school is on those or getting those during the day. So people really need to be able to go to a website or go somewhere to get those updates as well, and just have them.
I totally hear that. I would also say, I really hope if parents aren't getting our messages, that you call the school office and let us know, because if you can check social media on your phone, then you should be able to get our text that says, important email, please read. So, and I don't want to keep going into it, we can have a difference of opinion, and I hear you, Rebecca, but our official emergency communication is Blackboard. So if you're not getting our emails or our robocalls, I really need you, please, to touch base with the main office, because our families in that instance was my biggest priority. It wasn't someone sitting on 110 just curious about the social media post.
Oh, no, I get that, and like, originally, that makes total sense to me, but, you know, from a communications perspective, I hear from the Belton Food Shelf, for example, how many of their clients cannot receive text messages? They have phones that only connect to the internet, they do not have data plans, so they may not actually be able to get messages that way. And then I think like later in the day, that's the time to have a place to say, this is an ongoing situation, this is where we'll be posting announcements so that other people can access that. And just one other thing too, I appreciated the comments of just like not knowing what was going on in this situation. We experienced that too when we had a high schooler and a middle schooler. I can text my high schooler and say, are you okay? Do you want to come home? Is this stressful? And she could tell me what's going on in the school. I had no way to get in touch with my middle schooler and had no sense. It would have been really helpful to hear from the school. Again, maybe not at 10, maybe at noon when things have come
We
down.
put an update letter out on 9/30.
I know, but to be able to say, like, this is the mood here. This is what we're telling the kids or not telling the kids. If you're concerned and want to check in with them, here's a way to do it. Just going a little bit deeper, you know, even so that we know what are they hearing, what have you told them or not told them for different age groups. And then, you know, a day later, is there going to be any access to counseling? Are there going to be further discussions to help them process? Like, we just had no sense of how it was really being handled in the building.
Any other, on the communication aspect, any other thoughts? I think we've got a pretty good idea of where there's some.
Just like building on what Trevor was saying, is making sure that the communications are consistent and predictable. If you're going to be sending out a letter, I would like to see some sort of text notification coming in. Even if it's just, hey, there's a, like, even if it's being like, hey, there's a White River Valley alert, check your email, or check your website. That way, you're like, departments that we get snow delay text, we get the principal search text. This is like super, super high priority. And I just, yeah.
Did a text not go out, a letter?
No. I was actually not on the communications, but you are. I am now adding to all email and text notifications after this incident. But we got an email and no text.
Yeah, I'll have to check in with them, because I was under the impression we had texted, so.
It was, yeah, just like keeping it predictable.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
And this, like, this is good, because again, on his end, thinking that went out, and you guys are saying that it didn't, so that's for us to go, why did this happen? Was there, did the software, you know, whatever. Everyone good with the communication part? We certainly know that there's some stuff to work on there. I see a lot of other thoughts.
So actually, we're moving on to the communication, and I understand that that incident was very important, and as a parent, I felt that as well. My curiosity is about sort of what we about that. I'd just like to raise a point.
Fair. I think that's a fair point. And I don't mean, but that's something, and I can sit down with
You know, that's useful information. I wasn't aware that folks were having a hard time seeing out of that camera. But
Well, you know, and I'm not individual, right? I mean, obviously, I'm close to that, but it's reality. There's a small camera. If you're a crafty 14-year-old, figure that out. Nobody's laying eyes on that person. The high school I went to, it's a double door. You buzzed in the corridor, and you were, by the way, right next to the window where there were 8 active before. No possibility. I mean, there's some possibility. Listen, you know, we also had metal detectors on the back doors, but I went to a large high school, so that's different. I get that. Resources. We don't have, you know, police force that can have an SRO at our schools, at all schools.
well, we do, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, but I mean immediate resources. I'm talking about tomorrow, because these are things that we go, oops, wish we acted on that. And so to me, you know, hearing this conversation about this one incident really makes that much more focused for me as a parent. And as a spouse of somebody who works here, it is right inside.
And I think, just to touch on that, because I think that's a good thing, there's also a real balance that you have to strike overall with school safety, right? We could make it so that there's somebody's never going to be able to come here. But it's going to look like Fort Knox, right? So there's a balance of, talk about metal detectors. I guarantee you a lot of parents and people in Vermont would hate to have their kids go through metal detectors, right? And so there's this balance of safety and freedom, like we have in lots of conversations, right? So wicked good points, and I've got some ideas already in my head of like cheap fixes that we could probably put in place for that. But there's this balance, right? You know, we want it to look like Afghanistan with T-walls and armed guards and all that? No. And so what is the balance that you strike with safety and security?
It's a double-edged sword because during the day the building's locked down. At night, after school, this building is open. Anybody can walk in here. Anybody can go into a classroom and sit in there and be here the next morning and no one's going to be none the wiser. You can walk right in this building when they have practices. There's zero safety in that. And I don't know the answer. I'm not going to pretend that I do. I'm just being devil's advocate in that, sure, you can lock down the building all day, you can have cameras, you can have metal detectors, but when 4 o'clock comes and this building is wide open, anybody can come in here and basically do anything they want to do because no one's watching them.
That's something that we'll talk more about too.
And you're right, I don't want to take away from the small town. All of us, we live here for a reason. You know, a lot of us grew up here. There's a lot more violence than there's ever been here. You know, we hear things on the news now that we never heard. Well, I'll speak for myself. That I never heard. I grew up here. I went to school and graduated from here. Never have I heard what I hear now. You know, we had our fair share of stuff. I mean, we drank, we did stuff we shouldn't have done, but nothing to the caliber. I'm older now, it doesn't matter. The statute of limitations is way past. But you know what I'm saying? So that's the part. Every time I come here to an event, you know, after school to get my kid or whatever, the building's wide open.
Yeah. And that's, again, he's heard it, and that's a conversation we're going to debrief in the next couple of days about what we heard.
yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, you're right. And when our kids travel to away games, those schools are wide open. I 100% hear you.
I mean, I don't know if they have other safety measures in place for bigger schools like Hartford. I really don't know. I haven't been to a basketball game here or any other event. But I think it's less apt to happen. I think it would happen more during practices because there's less people around. There's no teachers. There's a coach, down in the gym. They don't know what's going on out front.
I'm glad we shifted the conversation to the so now what? And I worry that, like, if you look of these people and what they can do for us. But I think the other part of the conversation is how do we heal our community and how do we, instead of alienating people, invite them back in and offer to help, which is hard to do too. I get it. It's a tough pill to swallow when there's like some yucky stuff that's happening, but we're all humans and people make bad mistakes. So anyway, I hope we can shift the conversation to not just metal detectors, but also that kids make crappy decisions and hopefully we'll grow so we good.
But when you say alienating people, it's also alienating the children. You gotta bring them in. Unfortunately, we live in a time where the kids have to be aware of what's going on around them. They had an abduction attempt in Bradford. Just what? 3 days ago or whatever. You know, they went up on the street and pulled them off the street. They follow kids home. The kids need to be aware too, I feel.
The kids are aware, so stop right there. The kids are probably more aware than
I need
some of us.
conversations with you and,
Yes.
and, you know, having those conversations, having Alice training. I went through Alice training twice. And if you can do it, do it. I found it extremely helpful for myself. And I talked to you about that actually, and when we had our meetings in Chelsea, I brought it up to bring it to the schools. That should be mandatory.
We have, so.
It's been here, it's been here?
2 of your schools, yeah. I mean, I just talked about that.
We're all doing option-based drills.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I've been one, 2 different schools, right?
Well, you had Bethel teachers and Rosen.
That came here, right, and then you did, yeah, so,
You did the Alice
did it twice.
For
Yes.
teachers.
Good, for teachers.
Yeah,
Is
and
there
then-
one for kids? Unfortunately, we have.
So for elementary, there's a lovely little, I mean, I know you're not asking elementary, I know you're being
No,
it's really
that's
big,
okay.
but there's a lovely little children's book that says, we're not scared, we're prepared, and it talks about a big bad wolf. It dials it down, but it's the same thing about being alert, and it has this whole acronym. So we're just trying to bring it to kids, scare them, but also be prepared, right?
And it's a terrible thing that we have to teach our children, but
We are,
it's reality.
we are doing that.
Okay.
So that is the whole thing.
I just wanted to piggyback on that a little bit. I don't know if anybody here participated in the community safety conversations in Bethel this fall, but Bethel's Equity and Inclusion Committee and Community Engagement Committee held conversations in every neighborhood with a potluck dinner so that people could really talk about growing safety concerns, exactly what you're describing, increased drug use, heavy crimes, speeding, a lot of different things happening in our communities that people feel are escalating, whether they actually are in terms of numbers or not. And a couple of the biggest takeaways that came out were around this education and preparing community members to deal with these everyday situations that are coming up, unfortunately, every day. And so I guess I'll throw this out as a question/request to all 3 of you for help in this regard, because I think it needs to be beyond the school community, but with everyone. People are saying, number 1, they just don't even know who to contact. So to Jamie's point, and Andrew, contact the right people. It's almost like we all just need a fridge magnet. What is the first
Well,
number?
Max, since you mentioned that, I do have some right over
We've
there.
got some there. But I think people need a little more, they need to know, like, okay, do we contact the sheriff or Royalton PD or who and in what situation? And then the second one is, how do we deal with specific situations? So the conversation I was in was in the Bethel Gilead neighborhood, and somebody described a person trying to break into a home at midnight. And the question is, what do we do in that situation? Should we show up? What if we have a neighborhood watch? Do we show up with a weapon? Should I have a weapon at home?
But also, one thing too, all those conversations, I think maybe I got one random invite on Facebook and forgot to put my calendar, but they never reached out to us to answer some of those questions and work for, and then I got kind of blindsided at the Bethel Select Board meeting, right? Oh, here's all these things that, so, a conversation like that, like, throw that out there. Somebody's trying to break in your house, call 911, right? 911 will get the right law enforcement agency there, and those are some deeper conversations, and, we can talk about facilitating more of that, and I understand that. And so, again, it goes back to the communication portion where, all right, we've got to get you the right information if you don't have it already. So,
And that's-
call us on Facebook.
That's what people are asking for. The purpose of those was really to listen to people about what they're experiencing and worried about. And then the follow-up is, could we get you to come and do more conversations? What about kids? Kids came up that
Can you project a little? Can you use your
Sure.
PE voice?
So, I don't think I have.
I was a phys ed teacher, so I got that PE voice.
What we're trying to do is be a resource, and so the magnet idea is really interesting to me, especially Loretta, who's also on the committee with me, has a magnet already, and where I live in town, we've had to call a lot. So I should have her number memorized, but I do not. So I have had to use that magnet a couple of times. I even have it in my car. So I would definitely take one of her magnets on the way out the door.
If you're a royalty resident.
Yes, if you're a royalty resident. But if
Right,
you want to
it's
talk
just-
more
it's just
about
royalty.
that, come
PD
see me
info.
after this meeting.
I mean, honestly, if there's an emergency, like you need, like, if
I
it's
feel
Bethel schools,
alienated.
we've gone to Bethel schools, we've gone to Sharon schools, I've been to Tunbridge. So anytime there's an emergency at the school, pretty much any officer on duty is gonna go. Because schools are, that's our youth, right? Those are important, you know, community for us. So we're not, I'm not saying, we've gone to Randolph when there was, so, you know, because us as police officers, there's not enough of us, like say New York City, the big, you know, Boston. We are a small community, so we're all gonna go to those places that we can help out. So I'm never not gonna go if somebody, if it's a true emergency and, you know, nobody else is close. Question?
I want to speak back to the school and the doors. I really would like our school to be up to state codes for safety for the doors. I feel like every parent here, once we drop our child off, they're in your care, we want them safe, contained and safe until we pick them up. So if we can get those not delayed for the bond that failed at the last vote, but if we can get that going so that our kids, we feel like they're safer when they are in your care, we'll be happier community members.
That's a big budget item, that's a big thing, y'all gotta figure out how to come up with money, it's a lot of money.
Well, right now, it's not just for improving the safety, it's a bigger piece. And I think that may be why it's like that. So if we can separate it out, start with the safety piece, and take care of protecting our kids.
That's a good thing to write to your school board members about.
I went to school.
No, I know, but that's one of those things that you're gonna have to go through that process, like, we can't solve that tonight.
No, but I think it's.
Peggy's here, she heard it. Yeah.
It's a safety issue, and that's why we're here.
Oh, no, but I'm just saying like that, like, but the answer is you're gonna have to talk to your school board, it's a big money budget item that would.
But it's the safety of our children. Who wouldn't vote yes?
Well, there are people that would vote no, but, other thought?
I just wanted clarification. I wasn't advocating for metal detectors. Actually, it's terrible. I just keep coming up. I'm the one that said it. I'm sorry. That's not what I was advocating for. I did want to clarify with law enforcement rules. When in doubt, it's okay to call 911.
Absolutely,
You know,
yes.
they're not. The dispatcher's not going to say that doesn't sound like an emergency. You need to call Loretta. They're going to connect you to the proper number. So if you can't remember in that moment, totally okay to call 911.
Totally okay. I will, if for true, yeah, if you keep calling 911, just call, that's an issue. But if you truly need something, yes, 911 is your, even if I don't think it's necessarily an emergency, I'm still going to tell you to call 911. So,
That sounds great. I'm Dave Bethel, Select Board, Dr. Ryan Levitt, and one of our biggest complaints is that people are calling 911. And what's happening to cops? So what do we need to do? How could that be corrected? 911 be corrected? Different phone number?
so
Rather than
the way,
the Vermont State Police, we have to talk to them. They don't have any clear down so many quotes. And after midnight until 5 in the morning.
2 a.m., but, so let me follow response they get from calling 911. So that's a reality, right? Your primary law enforcement at times you contract with us for 23 hours a week right now. You're not getting response from state police at times during certain scenarios. We're always very responsive if we're around and can be. Yeah, I know. But it's a money thing. Like it's going to be.
Well, it's a staffing thing.
So,
go ahead.
no, that's, I was just saying, so one of the issues with 911 is that when somebody calls 911, depending on where that phone call gets routed to, you could get somebody in Wilson, so then they have to route it back to our dispatch, which whoever that's going to go to. Now, if state police is, so they're tied up and say, you know, Holmgren or somewhere, because they've only got like 2 to 3 people on, then it very well might be a while. So, you know, when we're on, we've assisted several different times. I know Ryan's assisted in other areas where we can, you know, we try to back each other up. So, but you're right, it could be a while, depending on what the case may be. You know, if it's a welfare check, it might have to wait on the board for a little bit, or, you know, something else. You know,
And sometimes stuff that you think there should be more of a police response to. I know my agency, if I got people around, sometimes if I don't, we're responding. Our agency has always been very good when there's people on, but I don't think anybody here, unless you're a Hartford, Springfield, Windsor resident, has 24-hour police coverage, right? American law enforcement is very expensive, and there's been an over-reliance in our small towns on state police that have never worked past 2 a.m. anyway, so they call people out. And it's a scenario where like it's hard enough to survive in Vermont as is, but your problem is there's been an over-reliance on state police, and they have a staffing and a cultural thing where they might not respond in a timely manner because maybe there just isn't somebody, or they're calling somebody from out of bed. And the change there is not the 911 system. The change there is, you know, what are you willing to pay for service? You know, do you want a 24-hour police department? You're just only going to get so much from state police right now. They still have the staffing and the bodies.
That still doesn't solve the problem, because everybody that the program to call 911, people are not getting response. So our words out with folks are, if your number gets passed out.
Yeah.
Because someone's calling you, all cases are called out. Sooner or back. Then a late night call to 911, they say,
Right, but so, and again, we're understaffed for policing. I don't mean we're understaffed some people are understaffed. Dave, at the end of the day, if you want better coverage, you're only going to get so much from state police. But that's the answer to your question. Like, the 911 thing is, there's not enough cops, and there's not cops on.
So
If you don't have
what
to
happens when you take things into your own hands? Then we're the criminal. You know, it's a scary, for me, it's a scary situation. If I have someone trying to break into my house, I'm not going to stand there and let them come in my house. I'm going to call 911 if we need the ample amount of time. If you don't get there, hey.
You have a right to defend yourself, but
Whatever
also,
happens, happens.
yeah, and you've got to articulate, you've got to be able to, you have to be in serious bodily threat, somebody breaking your house in the middle of the night, and anybody, you can defend yourself. Like, that's how it is. It gets tricky.
Because I don't have any guns. I'm going to use a gun. But,
Somebody breaking your house in the middle of the night, you're going to be.
I'm an angry woman, and I probably.
But I don't mean to speak for Ryan. Dave, I don't mean to speak for Ryan. He will give you all night coverage if you pay.
I like this guy.
He's told me if I want all night coverage in every building, he is ready.
I will also say that
not, yeah.
That's
we-
okay.
Yeah.
There's the stars of it.
And Ian, as you or your people have responded to checks beyond those, what I call regular hours. So I'm personally not unhappy. I'm saying from my perspective.
Right. When somebody calls them on, they somebody should
Right,
ask.
it's going to be the first one.
Oh, great. No, I'm kidding. But, I mean, that's one of the realities. What Dave's talking about is there's not enough police coverage in some of these areas, right? So that's a much deeper, bigger conversation and a very expensive conversation, unfortunately.
And as far as being in the school atmosphere, I wonder if maybe some of the helpful things would be more education in older not the 5 to 18. They need to be educated. There are folks who are not sure what to do.
We are willing to educate anybody who wants it.
So over to your house.
That's a, I'll work on that.
It's an education.
We'll work on
the adults.
We're willing to educate anybody who wants it.
So that's something I need to, I'll put more
We
effort.
can try to put something together. Oh, sorry, Beth.
I just want to clarify something because I thought I heard Sheriff Palmer just say that if you put money at it, you'll get a better response time.
So what Dave's, so,
No?
yeah, so what Dave's talking about is his situation, right? Folks that live in Royalton, you have 3 full-time officers.
Not all the time, not 24/7.
No, I'm saying your total staff is
Right.
3 full-time officers.
Yep,
They're not always on.
right.
The town of Bethel contracts with us for 24 hours a week, a total week, not 24 hours a day. The Vermont State Police ends up being the default if somebody's not around, or I can't send one of my people, or she's not coming from home. They're the default law enforcement in the state if you don't have a police department. So they will respond if they can, if they're willing, if it meets whatever criteria they have that night. But you're talking that they might be running a shift of 3 people for a very, very big area. So they might have to go all the way down to, well, there are different barracks up here, but they might have to go all the way down to Stockbridge or Rochester, and then, oh no, there's a call in Sharon or Bethel or Royalton or Stockbridge or Stratford, wherever. That's a long pole, even if they're coming code 3, right? So when I talk about throwing money at it, if you, like, I live in Windsor. We have a full-time police department. We're spending about if you figure benefits, we're spending about $1.6 million for 24-hour coverage. Sometimes it's double coverage, right? So a town like Bethel, for example, has spent, it's $80,000 contract, right? So to go from $80,000 to $500, $700, $1.2, $1.3 million, like, you just can't do that to taxpayers, right? That's such a significant hike. So we're trying to do it incrementally, but a lot of these small towns can't afford 24-hour coverage, right? I mean, I don't know if anyone else pays taxes in Vermont, but it ain't getting any easier, right? So, and this is coming from somebody whose entire department essentially is contractually funded, and I got to hustle my services. But it's tough, and that's some of the economy here. Like, we're a small area. It's nice to be small population, but we don't have the tax bases to pay for towns. You know, again, a town like Bethel, we get 2,000 people, maybe. So 2,000 people, they probably could use 24-hour coverage, or at least 16 and 20 hours a day coverage, but it's just not affordable. And so, you know, even a town like Royalton, you have 3, but to do full-time coverage, you probably need 10 or 12, 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? And it's tough. And so that's one of the things when I talk about throwing money at it, that helps increase service. But there's always so much money to go around.
Small town with a big, a small town budget with a big city crime is what, you know, it's
holy, but I know why it feels that way. But also, a point was brought up. It isn't just about money, right? You're all here because you care about your community, right? And this is a pretty big issue. Some folks have laughed because they got sick of me running my mouth. But you think about how important this issue is. Why isn't there 300 people here, right? And so, as communities, we got to work harder to build good kids, to do good things, to be involved, to coach t-ball, to be a mentor to kids, to our youth, right? We're talking about a kid that, you know, how we start this conversation off. Did that kid have a lot of good, you say, you know, does that kid have a lot of resources and a lot of good people showing the right thing to do? No, not at all, right? And then we have to have a meeting like this about it. And what she said is like, we all have to work, it's not just me, right? It's each one of us has to work hard to build a better community. And that's a much broader thing, but that's part of it too. So it's not just money, but we've got to work, we got to teach our kids. We've got to be good people ourselves, right? Like she talks about what was on Facebook, that was pretty rough. So imagine being that kid that screws up and makes a mistake, or whatever, we'll call it that, right? You're out being a little knucklehead, which I never was, by the way, never ever, that's just not the case. But imagine that and then seeing that you're the subject of all this vitriol and hate on social media, right? And is that making things better? No. And there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation. There's a lot of, you know, and some of that's back on us. We need to make sure that the right stuff is put out. But as a community, you know, this group of professionals is working really hard to do everything we can. We know there's some stuff we got to do better, but also as a community we got to do better too. And maybe when you see that nonsense going on Facebook, not jump on it, right? Like, you know, obviously go like our page and like all the comments, you know, that's fine. Follow me on Instagram, those type of things. But we've got to do better too, is like not fall into the crap that actually makes things worse. Because, you know, everyone's talking about, oh, the kid with a BB gun. But there's also some fights going on at the gas station, and it wasn't on one side. There's a lot of nonsense that went on that it was not as one-sided as maybe it was projected. There were some other people that made bad decisions, right? And we got to work on holding each other accountable as a community and do those right things. So
We gotta work on Florida, bring it back on
Intelligence-based policing.
Intelligence-based policing, and I think it needs to be closer here. Sure. Be out there, you know, we did get a pretty good turnout though, but I think we need to bring that back.
And also, I know we're getting kind of maybe towards the end of this. One thing we talked about, reaching out to the right, like reaching out to us. Somebody, you remember all the car break-ins you had here, right? You remember that little to-do? You had some cars gone through. A loaded firearm was stolen out of a car, right? Some kids had that should not have had that. A kid told the teacher who reached out to me on Facebook. I happen to be looking at it on my phone because that's what I do 24 hours a day. Well, I responded and were able, with the community's help, to track that down. Within a couple hours, I had a stolen gun off the street out of the hands of some knucklehead kids that need some better mentoring and things like that. Now, was that the best way to do it, sending a message to my Facebook? Probably not, but it worked. But at the end of the day, you've got to reach out to us, especially like in a safety security thing. 11 o'clock at night, emailing Jamie is obviously not the right thing. You might have to pick up the phone, you might have to call and say, hey, police department, my kid just told me that his buddy has a stolen gun. And then we'll figure it out from there, right? So, you've got to do the right things in that scenario. And again, you know, this whole thing started with a kid posting on Snapchat. Would that have been better if he had reached out to law enforcement and maybe some of this could have been avoided? Maybe it could have been avoided sooner, you know? And so really teaching our kids and even ourselves, reach out to the proper people through the proper channels at the proper time. So anyways.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. So this is really just step one, and it got a little delay because of weather delay. So we're going to continue to have conversations. We're going to continue to give you updates on what we're doing as a school system in partnership with local law enforcement. And we'll continue to have these community safety concern conversations throughout the supervisory union. So the next one we'll have, we're going to go to Bethel. But there's also concerns up the 110 corridor, just with lack of coverage with Orange County Sheriff's Office. So please, if we're in another school within the supervisory union, and I think most of the folks here tonight are from White River Unified District, you're more than welcome to join us. So know that next steps will be continuing to follow. Listen, your feedback never falls on deaf ears here. We're an organization of continuous improvement. So thank you for sharing the feedback, your concerns, and we'll look to continue to address it. But it is a partnership. I hear about the safe entrances, know it's a priority. And thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate
Thank you
it.
for the communication that you do.
Yes,
I would also say tomorrow's National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day.
There's some magnets out there. If